Welcome to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the Dynamics of Everyday Life. Today I'm excited to welcome another guest to the show, Dr. Jill McGarry. Dr. McGarry is a clinical psychologist with 28 years of experience working with people in a variety of specialisms, both in the NHS and in private practice. The main focus of her work currently is sleep, and I'm delighted to be talking to her today about our relationship with sleep. Sleep is crucial to our well-being, and our relationship with sleep is one that has a huge impact on us throughout our lives. Whether this be through the quality of our sleep, how much or how little we're getting, and the anxiety that this can provoke in us. When my daughter was a newborn, I used to dread the nights because I knew that I wasn't going to sleep well, if at all. And it added extra anxiety to the already overwhelming feelings of anxiety that I had as a new parent. Our dreams also add an extra dimension to how we feel about our sleep. Sometimes we can have dreams that disturb us because they can reveal something about ourselves that we hadn't considered before. For Freud, dreams were incredibly important. He saw them as the raw road to the unconscious and devoted a whole book, The Interpretation of Dreams, to exploring this phenomena. So sit back and enjoy the conversation Jill and I have. There's lots to learn and hopefully the promise of a good night's sleep afterwards. So welcome back to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, everyone, and I'm delighted to be doing another guest interview on the show today. And today we're welcoming Dr. Jill McGarry, who is a sleep expert, and sleep is so huge for all of us. I'm so excited actually to have Dr. McGarry with us. So introduce yourselves to everyone, Jill.
Oh, hi, Julia and everybody. So thank you, first of all, for inviting me along. Sleep is, like you said, it's vital to everybody's life. I've started to work with people with learning disabilities and autism as a clinical psychologist about 25 years ago. And it wasn't long till I realised people with Down syndrome really struggle with their sleep because they have a bigger tongue and a shorter neck and a fatter neck. It means they can't breathe at night. So they often suffer from a thing called sleep apnea. So I worked with the Manchester sleep team to make sure they had reasonable adjustment material and a clinic so that people were getting the best help. So I suppose my journey to helping people with their sleep started a long time ago. I then worked with people with autism and they have a different issue with sleep. Often it's around their sensory needs and their attachment needs. And then I went on to work with mums going through postpartum psychosis and postnatal depression, because there's loads of help out there for the babies, but not for the mums that are struggling. And then I was asked to work for the Manchester sleep team. So I kind of came all full circle. And then, I've retired now from the NHS and I just want to help people on a one-to-one basis, but also help corporations take on that agenda of fatigue for their staff to help their companies be more productive, but to have better teams that can do a much more effective job by sleeping better.
Well, absolutely. It feels like you've got loads to share with us all. I feel like we could talk all afternoon about this. Sleep is a fundamental part of our lives. And if we don't have good sleep, it can cause us to have challenges with our relationships with ourselves and with other people. So, I'm really intrigued to learn, what are the things that you see most in your work?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question, Julia. I suppose I like to break things down, make them really simple and rememberable. So when I'm talking to people about what the different sleep problems that I come across, I often say there's four. There's one big B and three tiny T's. So the big B is the breathing problem. So people have what I was describing before, sleep apnea, whereby when they're asleep, they can't breathe. They might not even be aware of it, but people that are snorers are more prone to it. But if you can't breathe at night, you're not getting oxygen to the rest of your body. So actually it has a massive implication to your just physical well-being. It can cause heart problems, definitely causes diabetes, it causes being overweight, obesity eventually, and just being lethargic, which then of course impacts on relationships hugely when you can't even listen and you feel irritable all the time. So that's my biggest one. Sleep apnea is as big a problem as insomnia, but most of us have heard of insomnia. It's the one that everybody says if they've got a sleep problem, everybody goes, "Oh, you've got insomnia then." But actually, sleep apnea is as big a problem, statistics wise, number population wise. But because it's got so many more health implications, that's why I call it the big B. So the big breathing problem. And then the second biggest one is, like I said, insomnia. So I call that one of the three tiny T's. So it's too little sleep is what insomnia is. There are other reasons why you might have too little sleep. It might not be that you can't stay asleep in the night. It might be because you can't get off to sleep. So some people with ADHD and other neurodiversity issues find getting off to sleep really difficult. It can take 4 hours to get off to sleep. So I do quite a lot of work with people like that. When I was saying before about sleep apnea, I might work with people not to provide the mask to help them sleep at night, but help give them some alternatives if they're really struggling using the mask, or they want other alternatives to wearing a mask to help the air get through and down that throat. So other things that might happen are the other two areas, the other two tiny T's. One of them is too much. So those are people that are really fatigued more than anything else. So, it might be an iron deficiency or a vitamin D deficiency, or it might be a restless leg that's causing issues as well. And then the last one, the third tiny T, is things that go bump in the night. So I sometimes help people that are going through nightmares or night terrors, or they're falling out of bed, or like I said, restless leg. So, or some of the other parasomnias are a little bit wacky. So I've recently worked with a lady suffering for hypnagogic experiences, and that's like seeing an old lady, an old hag is what they often describe it, but it only happens at the beginning of falling off to sleep or just as you're waking up, and that's when it's called hypnagogic or hypnopompic. And it's very specific and it's really treatable, but really frightening. People think they're having psychosis when it happens, and it only took 3 sessions to help her. So yeah, there's quite a lot of different things that I can help with, and each one, depending on who they are and what the issue is, needs different things for a different length of time. I think the problem is people just automatically assume it is insomnia, and when somebody doesn't have a sleep problem, they have no idea how to help, because it's like having a superpower. People say, I just do it. I don't know how I do it. I just can sleep. So actually talking to somebody that's a good sleeper doesn't help you whatsoever, does it? It's not like other things. If you want to be good at sports, speak to a good sports person, and you'll get some clues. And it doesn't work like that. So we've really had to work over the last 2 decades, really, and knowing the science of sleep, because you're not just unconscious when you're asleep. Lots more is happening when you're asleep. We now have these clever gadgets called polysomnographs. So they're like electrodes that are put on your head. There's about 17 of them. Some of them are put on your body as well. So we can measure what's happening when you're asleep. And we now know that our brains are doing more when we're asleep than when we're awake. It's doing a different thing though. When we're awake, all the different parts of our brain are working quite separately. So as I'm speaking and listening, I'm using my Broca and Werner area of my brain. I'm looking at you, so I'm using my occipital lobe. I'm actually moving my hands, which people won't be able to hear. And I'm using my motor cortex to do that. But when we're asleep, all those areas integrate a lot more. And when we're asleep, we wash out all our toxins, we regenerate all our neurotransmitters and hormones, our memory gets improved, and we work through things emotionally. So it's not, it's a lot more than just being unconscious and just it happens. So yeah, it's a fascinating world that's only just being uncovered, and it does. I say this quite a lot. It does annoy me, and my family and friends find it quite hilarious if I go shopping with them and we're somewhere and I find like somebody's offering sleepy teas or sleepy pillow sprays for 30, 40, 60 pounds, crazy money, or even not crazy money. They're good as a placebo effect, and they're good at relaxing you to some extent, some of them. But beyond that, you really need to get some specialist help if it is a major problem and affecting your life.
There's so much there that absolutely fascinates me, and I could go in a million
Yeah.
different directions.
Mm,
So what, because you do see them everywhere, you do see the sprays and the
yeah.
teas, etc. what would a sleep expert do that kind of gets below the layer that, you know, a placebo isn't going to touch?
Yeah, so it will be that very first thing. You'd assess somebody to see which of those four things it is. Is it the breathing? Is it the insomnia and too little or too much or something else? And then once you know what the issue is, then you can help. Quite often, though, it's missed that somebody has more than one. So if somebody has insomnia, they also might have sleep apnea. So a third of people with insomnia also have sleep apnea. So we call that COMISA. So missing out what the other sleep problem might be is really vital, because you're only half solving it. And if you're only half solving it, somebody's still really struggling to have enough energy in the day. So to put any strategies you put in place is really hard. So I often say it's like aggregation of marginal gains. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's a term that's often used by I don't know whether it was coined actually by cyclists. I don't know whether it was, but the British cyclist team use it. And when they decided they wanted to win the Olympics and the Tour de France and stuff, they use this analogy that you can't just have one project and sort one thing out and then move on and sort out another thing. You have to keep adding them in. Every new habit, every bit that you've found out that you could tweak and improve, you need to add in, not rather forget, as you move on to the next one. So there's no point sorting out your handlebars on your bike and then move on to sorting out your pedals and forget about your handlebars. Because I think at the last Olympics, somebody's handlebars actually fell off um, in the cyclodrome. So that was quite funny in itself. But that's the kind of thing that happens with sleep, is people move to help in one area and drop the other bit. So I often talk about sleep hygiene being important, but again, people don't even know what sleep hygiene is. You know, there's all sorts of advice out there, and experts and non-experts and people that pretend they're experts, have no qualifications, will dream up like these are the 20 things that make up sleep hygiene. One person came up with 100 things that make up sleep hygiene, and that really doesn't help people, because we want sleep, we call it sleep hygiene on purpose. So we treat it like dental hygiene or hand hygiene. So with dental hygiene, it's quite simple, isn't it? You need to brush your teeth for 3 minutes. You need to do a little bit at the gums and underneath and at the back, and then floss if you've got anything there, and use a mouthwash, eat healthy food. Really, really simple. You just need to do it twice a day. Same with hand hygiene. And you have to do those things even when things aren't working. So even if you need to go for a root canal treatment, we don't stop doing the dental hygiene. If we've got a tummy bug, we don't stop doing the hand hygiene. But with sleep hygiene, even if you knew what they were, people often drop them when they've got a problem and then start reading some spurious other information or doing some other things. But what is sleep hygiene? So again, I'm going to have to make some t-shirts of these things, because I love the fact that I've come from the world of learning disabilities, and I try to make things really simple. So again, I just think there's four of them. So you need to get your routine right. So that's the first. Well, it's not the first. It's one of four. It doesn't have to come first. And when we say routine, we're talking about what time you get up at, which is surprising, isn't it? I'm not talking about what time you go to bed at. And lots of sleep advice is about what you do during the day rather than what's happening in the bedroom and in bed. So setting a time you get up and keeping to it. Your body, everybody's body loves routine. I remember when I was taking my girls to school, I would often drive to school even when I wasn't dropping them off, because my body had got so used to it. You know, when we brush our teeth, we forget whether we've done it or not, or whether we've washed our hair, because we're in such a routine. And we need to do the same with our sleep. If our body clocks are really in sync with what we're doing, then it sleep comes far more naturally. But the anchor for that sleep is what time you get up, not what time you go to bed at. So for me, I'm an owl, which is also another important thing to know yourself and what your sleep preferences are. So I don't get up till 8 o'clock now. I don't work for the NHS, so I can work far better with my own natural body clock now. And then from that, you have to work out how much sleep do you need to feel rested, because again, everybody's different. So some people might only need 6 hours, some people might need 9. And everybody says, "Oh, but I'm trying to get that 8 hours, that magical 8 hours," and I'm like, really matter. Forget that. It's not an important thing at all. You just need to think about, when did you last feel really rested, that you'd had enough sleep? And then think about how much sleep you had that night or that week, and that's your magic number. However, if anybody's going over 6 hours, going lower than 6 hours or higher than 9 hours, then it would be a concern. We want to be thinking about, why is it taking that length of time? And so then you can work out, if, so say it was 8 hours that the person needed, you'd want to be in bed and getting off to sleep at midnight. So you perhaps want to go upstairs to bedroom about 11:30, brushing your teeth, getting changed. For some people, it takes them longer. They might want to get into the bedroom at 11 o'clock, put lights out, not doing anything else, ready to try and get off to sleep. So it's doing those things that are really important. So I think I said there was 4, and I've just done the 1, haven't I? Do you want to know what the other 3 are?
That would be great.
I don't know whether this is really, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the second one, and surprisingly, it's people are just beginning to talk about it. I'd say people are just beginning to talk about sleep, full stop, but they're also beginning to talk about the importance of light. So we're not talking about fresh air and getting outside for fresh air, which is good, but getting outside for light. So what we now know is that our bodies need 20 minutes of morning light to reset our clocks and to get into our brains enough melatonin to be able to get off to sleep at night. So people in countries like Scandinavia, where they have total darkness for several months, they have to use a special light called a light lux box to make sure they get enough of that light into their eyes to get their sleep to be working. Otherwise, it can cause depression for them and worse, hallucinations, huge mental health problems, as well as physical. So getting light into our bodies, because we are still biologically the same as when we were cavemen and cave women, and we got up when the sun rose. So the nearer we can mimic that for our bodies, the better. If we stayed inside, as do Scandinavians before they had these great gadgets, their clocks would skew. So when without light, we start to live on a 25-hour clock instead of a 24. So you can imagine over several months how much our drift would happen for an individual. So light is really important. But people are only just beginning, because that's quite fascinating, isn't it? Not many people talk about that. But if you looked it up, you'd see far more than ever before. You can even get a lux light meter on your Apple phone these days and Android phones. So you can measure how much light you're getting. So one lady I recently worked with said, yeah, I'm getting loads of light, And so when we analysed it, she thought actually working inside, working from home every day, sitting at a desk at a window where she can see beautiful light and she didn't need an artificial light on, was giving her enough light. But I said the glass takes out the good, nutritious looks that you need for your eyes. And when I showed her the meter on her phone, she was like gobsmacked, it was 100. And actually outside, if she stepped outside her front door, she would be getting 7,000. So it's a massive difference by being outside. And what we need is 10,000 looks for 20 minutes to give us what we need as a base for most humans. But for people with autism, they need more, and people with ADHD, they need more. So knowing that, and also knowing the fact that that glass is doing that, is really important, because people are so obsessed with not getting wrinkles and protecting their bodies that actually they're wearing sunglasses when they don't need to. So they're actually affecting how much lux they're getting into their eyes as well. So that's the number 2. And then the number 3 is warmth, or heat, as we'd call it. So again, I like people to try and remember what it's like being a caveman and cavewoman, and for all these sleep hygiene tips. We sat around the campfire because it got cold. And then the campfire went out and it was very cold. So to go to sleep, we need it very cold. But in the morning, we need it to be warmed up. That's what happened. The sun rose and our bodies warmed, and the light came out, and our bodies got warm. So what we need to do, like I said before, is do the things during the day that help that. So getting up and moving your body will warm your body up. Opening the curtains and looking outside will begin to warm your body up as well. Getting a nice warm drink, can help warm your body up as well. So anything that does that is really helpful. And yeah, at the other end of the day, keeping it as cool as possible. So people might say to me, but I like to have a hot bath or a hot milky drink helps. And I said, yeah, that can help, but it needs to be like 2 hours, 3 hours, probably before you go to sleep, because it's a bit like a curry. People in India and Pakistan like a hot curry because what it happens is it makes your body sweat. And when your body sweats, it cools it down. So it's the same for a hot bath or a hot drink. You know, it will heat your body up because it will make your body sweat, your extremities get warm, but your internal temperature will drop. And it's that sudden drop in temperature like you would get when the moon comes out and the sun goes down that we want to mimic, really. But it takes, your body's not a quick reactor to heat. It needs time to make that adjustment. And then the fourth one is nutrition. So people sometimes say, oh, you're a sleep consultant, so I bet you don't ever drink coffee. Coffee is caffeine's the enemy of sleep. And I was like, not quite true. You can still have coffee. You just have to time it well. So again, in the morning, coffee can be really good for you because it picks you up. And because what happens is the caffeine binds to a chemical in your body called adenosine. And it's adenosine that makes you feel sleepy and helps you sleep. So if it's bound to it, you can't feel sleepy anymore, can you? So it's a good chemical if you really find mornings hard. So like I said before, I'm an owl. I don't suffer from a thing called sleep inertia, but some people find it really hard to get up in the morning in a really chronic way. And we will often use coffee as a strategy to help on those occasions. So we would make sure they would have a double dose of caffeine in the morning as one of the warm things to get their bodies going. For a couple of clients, they've actually made up that flask the night before, and they might even have it in bed because they find it so hard to get out of bed. And that hot water, that hot drink plus the caffeine is sometimes what they need to give them some of that boost to get out of bed. So yeah, so that's another thing is to get the nutrition right, but also to avoid alcohol. You know, everything in moderation. You know, I'm not a teetotaler, and I love to celebrate things. But if people are using alcohol to get off to sleep, it really doesn't work. It doesn't help that integration that goes on when we're asleep that I talked about earlier on. It just, it's like having an anesthetic. It's almost the same, you know, you look the same, your body looks like it's very still, like it does when you have an anesthetic, but it's not doing the magic of a good quality sleep. But on top of it, you know, if you drink, you're bound to go to the loo more often, so you're bound to get up and break your sleep. And then on top of it, you might actually need to, if you've drunk too much, other effects can happen. You might feel dizzy and all the rest of it that then interferes with your sleep as well. So making sure you get your nutrients right. And there are, for those that really do struggle, like I said before, with not getting enough looks into their eyes, it's a substance called melatonin, and you can actually get melatonin from food as well. So for those that are really struggling, we'll often talk about what food people can have to improve that in their diet as well. But yeah, getting the nutrients right can make a big difference, and not eating late at night, because our bodies want to be calm and still and not overworking. And if we've just eaten, our digestive parts of our body are quite active. So there's people out there that are into intermittent fasting, and I'll often recommend it if you are struggling with your sleep, to stop eating around 8 o'clock, just to give your body 2 or 3 hours before you're thinking about going to bed, when it's not busy internally digesting and working through all that food that you've given it. Yeah, so that's the four of them. Hopefully I've made it simple enough.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it's so important, isn't it? The stuff that we do during the day, how we take care of ourselves during the day will have a massive impact on how we sleep at night.
Yes. Yeah. But how many people have insomnia that then go, oh, okay, so I'll sleep longer, I'll stay in bed longer. And like I just said, one of the sleep hygiene things is routine. So don't stay in bed longer. Don't do that. So don't forget those basics is really, vital.
But I love the fact there are 4 steps as well, because when you said, oh, 100 tips, I felt my heart sink because I was like, I'm not going to remember 100 tips.
No, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, how can we ever even imagine that? And people throw in the advice for insomnia, they throw in advice for sleep apnea, they throw everything in, to make up those 100 tips, as well as some bits that you go, wow, where did that come from? That make no sense at all. But hopefully I'm providing the best information, condensed in the best possible way. I've taken part in the cognitive behaviour therapy for insomnia in Oxford, and I've done the Northeast course, and I take part in weekly seminars internationally for sleep. So I'm hoping that, as the information gets, more of it gets out there, I can make it more palatable, more understandable for everybody else at the same time.
One of the things that
Mm.
I'm really intrigued about is when people come to see you, because you mentioned the big B and then the small T's, do people know what the problem is? Or do they come to you and go, I'm not sleeping and it's ruining my life?
Yeah, they come to me saying I'm not sleeping, it's ruining my life. They sometimes come to me saying, I think my sleep might be affecting my relationships, that I'm really struggling with my partner or my kids. And because I'm a clinical psychologist, they want that support. But when we unpack it, actually, if we can tweak the sleep right at the very beginning, it helps build their confidence to work on the other things. So they people come to me with autism and learning disabilities wanting some advice and support because they've just recently been diagnosed, and in amongst that I might do the sleep stuff as well. So but the majority of people, yeah, they first come with saying I've got a sleep problem and I don't know what it is. And then when I work with companies, people come on my workshops because I run them like team building events sometimes as well. And they don't even know they've got a sleep problem. So I can't tell you how many people I have given the acronym STOP BANG to, and they've sent me an email a week later saying, I'm so glad you gave me that acronym. I've shared it with a relative that I thought might have a problem. They've now gone to the GP. They've now got the kit. Oh my God, it's changed who they are and what they're doing. Or they might send me an email saying, thanks for going through it, I now know where to go, but I'd want some more support from you to be able to use the mask or to do some other things instead. So yeah, it can be a whole host of different ways that people suddenly realise they need the help. And sometimes people think if you have poor sleep, you just have to put up with it. And it is uber British to say, stiff upper lip and put up with it. You snooze, you lose, you sleep when you're dead. I'm sure there are many more like that, aren't there? But that's not helpful whatsoever. There's enough information out there to tell us that, if we don't sleep, we can cause huge health problems for us ourselves, huge relationship problems, but we can we can cause huge accidents. Anaesthetists are no longer allowed to work the crazy hours they used to work. There's guidance now on the hours they work because they have actually made mistakes and people have died. We've had shift workers, nurses and doctors kill themselves on the road after a long night because they've done several before. So now there's a guy, not Brian Connolly, the comedian, but the father of a doctor who killed herself and somebody else on the road for that very reason. So he's campaigning now to reduce doctors' hours even further, and to protect their health and other people's health. So, I don't know. I sometimes cite lots of different accidents. So Chernobyl being the biggest, the 4 people that caused Chernobyl disaster, all of them were sleep deprived, and so the calculations they did will have been that were wrong will have been caused by the mistakes they made due to the lack of sleep they'd had. So it's massive. It's just we don't ever calculate it that way. It's just in the ether, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it when you say we're just expected to power on through, because it can be
Yeah.
seen as a sign of weakness, can't it? Well, stop
Come
making a fuss, just get on with it.
We can have a little bit of a sleep debt. We can have 2 days, is what we
Mm,
think now scientifically, of little sleep, because as humans, that's what happens. When we were cavemen and cavewomen, if there was a lion or tiger outside our cave, we ain't going to get out. And we wanted to stay awake with keeping our fire going to make sure it stayed away. So we can do that for 2 days, but on the third day we have to rest, so often people that I don't know, working in the corporate world would say, I have to power through. I say, well, do it Monday and Tuesday, but make sure on Wednesday you do extra sleep, you have a nap. And I think in some countries, that is a real British thing, is to just power through. But in Europe, they love their naps, and I've got a few YouTube clips of people in Asia with beds in factories that they all pull out the beds at the same time, good old Chinese style time and Asian time. Get the beds out, nobody talks, no noise, half an hour, bish, bash, bosh, back up again and working. And we know it works. Our bodies love that rhythm. If it knows it's a set time, it can easily get synced into another cycle of sleep. So we've managed it with the British rowing team. One other clinical sleep expert that I know, called Nick Littlehales, he worked with the British rowing team. And of course, to be in a rowing team, you have to be a team. It's not a single person sport. So how do you all get together to do it together? They all had to get up early for it to fit in with everybody else's day job. So they all rowed at 5 o'clock together. So of course they were being sleep deprived, which was then affecting their performance as rowers. So what Nick Littlehales did was teach them how to nap. So each of them had their own napping program so that they caught that. So we sleep in cycles. We sleep in 90-minute cycles-ish. Like, again, we're all a little bit different. So he helped them all get that 90 minutes that they probably missed by getting up early to row together at some other time. So yeah, it's possible to push through, but only for a small amount of time, and then catch up. So yeah, but we can't do it. We can't be that stupid old idea of, yeah, you can carry on regardless.
It's made me think of back in the day when I was in infant school, and we used to sleeping lions. We would all go to sleep for 20 minutes. My children never did that in infant, so that's definitely something that's gone.
Yeah, and isn't that probably because of SATs? How dare we? Could you imagine Ofsted coming in and a teacher would let a class sleep for 30 minutes? I mean, it would be great. I would love it. But I don't think our Ofsted what they're called, examiners, reviewers, would even understand the importance of doing that. If we could teach our kids how to do that, that would be amazing. I mean, my nana was Spanish, so I was taught how to have a nap, and I am quite different to quite a lot of my friends who would not even dream about doing it. One of my friends now calls it her nana naps. I said, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but they're important, as we get older, particularly, we sleep differently. So we can't sleep in one big block the same as we used to be able to. So it is useful to some people to get that extra block, that extra 90 minutes in at some other point in the day.
But it's understanding that as well, because sometimes, you get that feeling that, oh, I'm having a sleep in the day, therefore I'm getting old. And there feels like there's almost a bit of a stigma around it, when actually your body's just changing and that's normal.
Yeah, definitely. When people often say, oh my gosh, I wake up at 2 o'clock now. I don't know why that is. And it might be because, their bladder's not working the same as it used to. So you might need to think about drinking less in the evening so that you don't wake up and go to the loo. But actually, what we know from this sleep science and these clever gadgets we put on people's heads is that everybody, there isn't a single person that doesn't wake up around 2 o'clock in the morning if they've got a good regular sleep cycle. It makes sense, completely evolutionary. If we think everybody in our clan has gone to sleep, isn't it good to wake up once in the night to just check on the brood? So there are books, I'd have to collect the names, books that could have like medieval time, where they wrote about the fact that people would get up and have a little meal together to just regroup and then go back off to sleep. So knowing that our bodies are doing different things at different times is really important. And one lady I recently worked with, she was saying, oh my God, my insomnia was brought on by my husband being obsessed with the fact that I was waking up. But now I know actually it's not only natural, I emphasized it by going to the loo, And then it fed into being insomniac because I was wondering if I'd be able to get back to sleep. But if I'd been able to say to my husband, hey, it's natural, you're doing it as well, you just don't notice it, because it will happen for some people for like 2 seconds and for other people 2 minutes. And then if they get alerted by loo or thinking about stuff, it gets expanded, or they decide to go for a meal. But but like I said, eating in the middle of the night is not the best solution. But yeah, so it is important to know our bodies, isn't it, Julia? The work you do is exactly the same, being really self-aware. So when I run workshops, half of it's about helping everybody know what's their natural, personal length of time they need sleep for. Trying to help them work out if they're an owl like me, like to go to bed late and get up late, whether they're a lark. I don't know what you are, Julia.
You know what? I think I
You.
changed. I used to be very much an owl, particularly when I was a student.
Hmm.
And I used to do a lot of bar work until 2 o'clock in the morning, and that was not a problem for me at all. Since I've had children, and particularly the kids need to be up at school really early, I wake up now about 6:15. And
Yeah,
I'm okay
yeah,
with that. And if I think 20 years ago that I'd have been thought I was doing that, I'd have been horrified. But now I'm like,
yeah,
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 that's okay.
yeah. It's what's needed. So yeah, we are flexible beings, so we can adjust. But to fit in with your preference, sometimes it's more important for some people than other people. But yeah, timings for kids is really annoying. So there's quite a few clinical psychologists that specialize in sleep and other sleep experts that are trying to campaign to stop schools getting kids to go to school so early, especially at secondary school age. Because like I was saying before, when you're older, you can't sleep for as long. But when we're younger, when we're adolescents, we our clocks change. So the majority of adolescents are owls, and they want to go to bed as late as possible and get up as late as possible. So school time starting at 8:30 now is even more ridiculous. And in fact, in some countries in America and Australia and some other parts, they've started to stagger the start of time of the day. So the older the kids are at school, the later they go into school. And it's had not just a benefit on exam results and on kids missing school, they're in school more often, but also it stopped bullying. It was quite a remarkable thing to notice, because it was the older kids that were bullying the younger ones. But if they don't start or end the day at the same time, opportunities are lost to do that. So it has an extra benefit on top of everything else. So, but the idea that they would be getting sleep at the right time is great. And if you just notice that, your child needs to be in bed longer in the morning, prepping to make sure it takes as little time as possible, not getting them up earlier and earlier to give them more time, but doing it right on the last minute, and really working hard at how can you do it within a really efficient amount of time, it is essential to help them.
Yeah, I've really noticed that with my children, in that as they've got older, as they've developed into teenagers and got
Mm.
into older teenagers, they actually actively choose to go to bed later. And it's not because they're, wanting to rebel or anything like that. Particularly my 17-year-old daughter is like, I don't want to sleep before then.
Yeah.
She's
Mm.
doing her schoolwork at 11 o'clock
Yeah.
at night. And as a parent, I'm thinking, oh, I don't think that's good. Her grades are great. I'm
Yeah.
really proud of her. She does
Mm.
fantastically, because she's working to what she needs to do. And I don't have a problem getting her up in the morning, but if you give her a morning where she doesn't have to get up, she'll be in bed till lunchtime. But she obviously needs
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just sad that our schools are not doing that for our kids. I'm not sure what teachers would think about it, and whether that would be able to be possible within schools. But we're short of spaces, aren't we? I can't imagine that it's not beneficial all round, and that to have teachers that have some flexibility as well would be great. I'm sure some teachers would love to be able to do, I don't know, I was going to say the banking, it might be something else that they need to do, first thing in the morning, or they're the ones that finish early. Having that flexibility in our workforce is great all round. And you have that economies of scale when we get to secondary school, because they're the big numbers, aren't they? They're
Mm.
schools with thousands of kids in it. So I don't know, 200 teachers. So you're going to have that flexibility to be able to make it work to some degree. But yeah, getting your kids to recognise that their own body needs and when they can work well is a real good start. If our teenagers know, or actually I can study really late, I can cram it, it goes in better at night, then that's great. But they also need to think about, from a sleep point of view and exams, when kids start to say, I'm going to cram in information, you can do cramming the night before to get information in to get to an exam. But what happens is, how can I best describe this? So what happens when we're asleep is our memory is consolidated, is what we call it. But it's a bit more like an in tray on your desk. So as the day goes along, you put in some information about your science exam, your English exam, your geography exam, your history exam, your lunch, what you wore, whether you need to wash your hair, whether you've washed your hair. I don't know why I'm obsessed with washing hair today. I don't know, lots of other facts, whether you spoke to your best mate, whether that boy looked at you, lots of information is in your in tray. And what happens at night when you're asleep, your in tray is looked through and it sifts out what you need to keep and what you need to throw away. So it moves the things to keep from working memory into long-term memory. I mean, this is a shortcut version of it. It's a bit more complicated, the science, but it puts loads of it in the bin. So when you wake up in the morning, your in tray is empty. The problem is if kids don't get enough sleep, their in tray isn't empty. It's already full or half full. So when they start to try and revise the next day, it's really hard to get that extra information in. So it's okay if you're just doing it for the next day, because your short-term memory can do it for one day, but it can't, because that in tray can't just constantly be filled and filled, because it doesn't have, everlasting, unlimited access. It will spill over, and you will lose things that are really important that you need for an exam or an essay or whatever it is you're doing. I don't know if I've explained that very well, but it's
we only have so much capacity, don't we, to put
yes.
things in, and we need to clear it out to make the space. Which leads me on to the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, and if this had any impact on sleep, which is dreaming, because sometimes you can have a really vivid, almost florid dream that you wake up and you think, well, I don't feel like I've slept now because I feel like my mind was so busy having this really complicated dream that if you try and explain it to anyone, sounds completely illogical. How much impact does dreaming have on our quality of sleep?
Oh, a huge amount, but we're only just beginning to realise it. So, these clever gadgets I keep talking about have been able to work out that in those 90-minute cycles, what's happening is 4 stages again. I love the number 4, I think. The first stage is you dropping off to sleep. So sometimes you feel like you're dropping off a cliff. You're easily woken, a little noise would keep you awake. You're almost half conscious, aren't you? You're really not fully asleep. And that takes about 10 minutes. And then the next stage is light sleep, and that's another 10 minutes. And then you go into deep sleep, and that's when your kids might have sleepwalking or sleep talking, that might happen, or even night terrors for babies as well happen in that stage. And then the last stage is what we call REM sleep, so rapid eye movement. And that's where the majority of our dreams happen. Some of it happens also in that deep sleep, but the majority happens in REM sleep. And what's happening in REM sleep, and why we call it REM sleep, we call it rapid eye movement, because all that's happening is our eyes are moving, and our diaphragm, because we still need to breathe. But the rest of our body is paralyzed. That's why if you pick up a baby in REM sleep, it's like a dead weight. Their arms are like dropping off. If you pick up a baby or a child in other stages of sleep, their muscle tone is still there. But in REM sleep, it's gone. And that's because what's happening is our brains have been really cleverly evolved to work through the stresses of the day. So it starts in REM sleep and in deep sleep, but more effectively in REM sleep, to think about those stresses in the day and work through them. But like I said, the brain becomes more integrated. So, your sights and your sounds start to reconnect. So you start coming up with crazy solutions, real lateral thinking of problems. that you wouldn't have even imagined, that sometimes make no sense whatsoever. But at the core, there will be a thing that you're trying to work through that happened in the day or in the month. And by having all those other parts of your brain work on it, you will come up with new and different solutions. But it's happening without your body moving. So your adrenaline's not working and your cortisol's not working. So it's much easier to work through a problem, isn't it, when you haven't got that pressure of your body sensations sending you into overdrive, whether it be fight or flight or freeze or flop. It's much better when it's just concentrating on the problem. So we know that, I don't know who it is, and I must look it up because I keep saying this. I think it's either Paul McCartney or Mick Jagger that has written quite a couple, I was going to say a couple, quite a few of their most famous songs during REM sleep. And they've woken up during it and remembered it, and even wrote it down on the bedside, and then gone to the recording studio the next day or whenever. But when we look at that sleep cycle that I just described, those 4 stages, and they happen, like I said, in 90-minute blocks, we draw it like a curve. So it starts off high where we're light sleep, then dropping down into deep sleep, and REM sleep is coming back up again. And REM sleep is really close to wakefulness. So if we're going to wake at any time in the night, it's when we're dreaming. So it makes sense that we might wake up in the middle of a dream and remember it. The other thing that's fascinating is the fact that our sleep, although it goes in the cycle of those 4 things, at the beginning of the night, the deep sleep is longer, because what's happening in deep sleep is our body is repairing. So our muscles are repairing, all our neurotransmitters and hormones and chemicals in our body are being rejuvenated, and all the toxins are being washed out of our body by our brain. So the lots is happening in deep sleep. And then as the night goes along and as you go into the next cycle of sleep and the one after, you do less deep sleep because you don't need to do as much of that, and you do more REM sleep. So you, again, we've evolutionarily been brilliant in doing that, because of course, when we were fighting off the lions and tigers, we needed to have our bodies ready to fight them off. It was more important than us to emotionally fight them off. So of course, our bodies took that amount of time to sort things out physically, and then you get the emotional. So yeah, it is really important. But that's why people sometimes say, God, yeah, my dreams seem to happen in the morning. And it's because it's longer in the morning and it's still quite close to that wakeful moment on the cycle. So I don't know if I've explained that really well, because of course I can't do it visually, but maybe that made sense, did it, Julia? I don't know.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, because it does feel at the later end of the night that, or first thing in the morning, that's when those dreams happen, and you kind of like wake up and you think, wow, I'm not quite sure what was going through my head before I went to sleep.
Yeah.
But it obviously takes longer to kind of like percolate throughout the night.
Yeah. So you're more likely to remember them in the morning. But it is fascinating if you can, if you are a person that wakes up, if you can jot down the odd thing, sometimes you might come with some solutions. My grandma actually woke up once in the middle of the night and just wrote a telephone number down, and we were just all chatting, and my mum turned around to her and said, you know what, you've been trying to find your cousin's telephone number for ages. I wonder if it's her number. And guess what, it was. How
Wow.
did that happen? So, that happened. I remember that from my childhood. That must have happened when I was about 16, 17. But I don't know whether that was one of the things that got me fascinated about sleep. But it just shows you, doesn't it? We subconsciously, when we're asleep, we're doing amazing things. And that's what I want people to take away, is that it's important. I know there are other sleep specialists out there like Matt Walker, who likes to scare people and say, if you don't get enough sleep, this will happen, this will happen, really drumming on about the health needs and the devastation. But I want people to just realize it's one of the best medicines you can have in life. Just prioritizing it, and asking other people sometimes to protect it for you. In my bedroom, I don't have my phone next to me on the bed. I have it at the other side of the room, and I ask my husband to protect it for me. So if we're on holiday, we'll work out where to plug our phones in so they're not next to the bed, because because like I said, I'm an owl. I do find it a little bit hard to get up in the morning. So if I have to get out of bed and get to my phone to switch the alarm off, I'm already out of bed, aren't I? I'm less likely to get back into bed. So, and also you don't look at it so much because it's at the other side of the room. So sometimes asking others to protect it, it might be about asking your partner that's better at DIY to put up some blackout blinds. It might be both of you deciding you're not going to have a packet of biscuits next to the telly at night because you want to stop eating too close to bedtime. There are all sorts of little handy hints that you can prioritise and protect it with.
Well, it brings me on to, I mean, I could talk to you all afternoon, Jill. You're so
Yes.
fascinating about this. And I think the unconscious has a huge amount to play in our relationship to sleep. But if I could, just what is your one thing that you'd like people to take away from today?
If somebody says to you, I'm struggling with my sleep or I'm exhausted, to just ask them a little bit more. Just try and remember that very first thing I said. Which of the four is it? Is it the big B or the three tiny T's? And not just have a really superficial conversation, but to help them try and find some ways to get some help, because it is devastating. It is a pandemic that's happening in the UK and in lots of countries, and that people are just not getting enough sleep. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can really make a big difference to people's sleep. So just widening the conversation, hopefully, is what people will feel a bit more confident doing in having this chat. And then, there are experts like myself that offer 15 minutes free consultations. So we can have a quick chat and try and help them work out which one it is and where they want to go to next. Or if it's not any of them, it could be about something else that's more important that they face.
Fantastic. Well, and you lead me into beautifully asking, how can people get in touch with you if they want to talk about this more?
Oh, yeah. No, nice one, Julia. So yeah, people can get hold of me via my mobile. So that's 07768 068 070, and just leave a text saying I'd like a 15-minute free consult. I usually run them on Mondays and Fridays. We'll just have a quick text exchange to find one that will suit you. People can email me via info@sleepbetterdoctor.co.uk. And my webpage is very similar to that. So that's www.sleepbetterdoctor.co.uk. And I'm on LinkedIn as Dr. Jill McGarry. So quite a lot of people connect me via that way as well. But hopefully that's lots of different ways. Easy peasy.
Well, what I'll do is I'll make sure I put all those in the show notes as well, so that people, if somebody's driving now or doing something else, that they easily accessible. So I will make sure that they're available for people as well. And I just wanted to say thank you, Jill. It's been absolutely illuminating talking to you this afternoon. I feel a lot better about my sleep habits now. So that's one person you've helped already, and I'm sure listening there'll be very many more. So thank you so much for coming on. And if I get an influx, maybe we'll have you back for some more delving into this world of sleep.
Oh yeah, that'd be great, Julia. Yeah, the more we can help, the better.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Dynamics of Everyday Life. Please hit the follow button for future episodes and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram at The Dynamics of Everyday Life, or find me on LinkedIn at Julia Rogers. I'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts on dynamics. The Dynamics of Everyday Life is brought to you by Coaching 42 and the fabulous team at the Podcast Boutique.